My original question was who is in the trade market team wise, and who should they target? So I don't know if you want to go ahead and start this off. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams looking. It's a technically one segment is 2 teams together, and that has to do with a little bit of the news today with Davante Adams. But a handful of teams. I'm not sure who you have in the market, but if you want to go ahead and kick us off, you can.
Well, good thing I didn't read the memo because I didn't go with teams. I picked players that might be on the move.
I went players first, and then I swapped it. Like I wrote it out as teams.
I think the number one player that's probably so I'll go players, you go teams. That'll be good. That'll give us depth to this. Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick's got to be on the move. I don't think at this point there's any way that you can bring him back in and rekindle this relationship that was fractured before it started.
Absolutely.
And pass rushers, Randy Gregory, Chase Young, these Von Miller back in the day. There's these pass rushers are always these splash trade chips, and it's hard to say what kind of shape he's in, but any team, Micah Parsons out for a couple of weeks, D-Law on the IR, things like that. Now we know the Cowboys won't do it because Jerry Jones never does anything like that, but that type of team, like you just mentioned, the Bills have nothing behind Von Miller, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Do they pick up the phone and see, can you get Hassan Reddick for a 7th round pick at this point?
I think there's a certain wide receiver that would love to be reunited with his old quarterback in Davante Adams, and maybe there is a need in Vegas for a little bit of pass rush help because they are ranked bottom 10 in the league right now in pass rush.
Tyree Wilson.
Tyree Wilson. There we go. Maybe we're looking at a little bit of a Hassan Reddick, Davante Adams swap plus a pick on the Hassan Reddick side. So I know that the look is right now about a 2nd round pick is what they're asking for Davante, but Hassan in a 3rd because Hassan's just kind of a throw in because what the fuck is he doing anyways at this point? But again, I think this benefits both sides. Davante would love, I think, to go out there and play with Aaron Rodgers once again, and then Hassan Reddick obviously wants to be out of New York and he wants to just play for money. He wants to at least make money. So and Vegas has the capabilities to actually pay him. They have the cap space, $27 million in cap. There was a couple teams that had kicked around for Hassan Reddick, but a couple of those teams just did not have the cap space for him because he's going to want to get paid before he even plays it down for whatever team that he goes to. So with Vegas having the capacity, Davante wanting out, I think this could be a potential good trade for both sides.
You know who has Hassan Reddick written all over them?
Philadelphia Eagles? Oh, wait. No, he was already there. Go ahead. Sorry.
They can't trade for him for 2 years, just so you know. My team, the 49ers, that's got Hassan Reddick written all over them. They've made a bunch of trades at the deadline the past couple of years to bring in pass rushers. They got the most cap space in the NFL, 2nd most cap space in the NFL. Yeah. And obviously that is trying to be rolled over for Brock Purdy, but the Super Bowl window is now, not 3 years from now. So I do think Hassan Reddick's definitely going to be moved. That was a nice tie-in with the Davante Adams. Number 3 on my list was the wide receiver need in Kansas City. Obviously,
I'm right there with you.
We talked about Tyreek Hill earlier, but I think based off of what's going on in Cleveland, I think the Chiefs have to pick up the phone and see if they can get Amari Cooper out of there. And I don't know about you, but Amari Cooper's route running and Patrick Mahomes throwing the football, that does not excite me in the least.
The only caveat I have Amari going somewhere, and it's not Kansas City. The only problem I had with Amari going to Kansas City is the Kansas City wide receivers led the league in drops last year, and I don't think they want that same thing to happen when Amari Cooper is leading the entire NFL with 6 drops for this season already over 4 games. He's looked a little bit of lackluster as late. Obviously, I still believe in Amari and what he could do. He played for the Cowboys. I see what he can do up close and personal.
Raiders.
So I think Amari might go somewhere else. I just don't know if it's Kansas City just because of the drop problem so far this season. I don't know if they want another wide receiver that might potentially have those issues kind of screaming in their face. I do have a different guy who runs decent routes.
Me too. I have a 3rd for the Chiefs. Who do you got?
I have a certain wide receiver who plays in the slot for a team that's 0-4 in Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk potentially being on the move. Brian Thomas looks really good, has big potential, sky high ceiling, and the team is 0-4. You might want to move some pieces around, especially get some draft capital back. And I think this guy could be the one to move it. For Kansas City, I think this could look really good for them.
What do you think about them calling up Tennessee and liberating DeAndre Hopkins?
I tossed that one around a little bit because DeAndre's played better as of late. And that kind of feels very Kansas City-ish. And the only other place I see DeAndre go and be like Philly, because for some reason Philly just like picks up a bunch of like washed players, a la Julio Jones. But maybe
yeah, that was awful.
Right? Almost as bad as him going to Tennessee. We can move on from that. I'm glad we didn't have the podcast then. But I could see it. I'm not sure if I like it. I might put that third on the list for me. I like Kirk there, and then I would like Cooper, and then Hopkins would be right below that. Obviously, Hill would probably be top of the list, but in terms of outside of that.
Did you see him blowing up on the sidelines last night, Tyreek?
No, I didn't.
Clearly, I watched way too much of that game while you were focused on the exciting game.
Right.
I guess another tie-in, we'll see if either of your teams tie into this. I got two quarterbacks that might potentially be on the move. Obviously, we've talked about Bryce Young already, but also Mr. Russell Wilson down there in Pittsburgh, because at this point, I would think that Justin Fields has bought you a lot of equity in your 3-1 start, especially the way he's playing. And you're not benching him at any point unless he falls off a cliff. He would have to get hurt. And I'm just not sure what Russell Wilson brings you at this point. Why do we think he could stay healthy? Because he just hasn't been able to. So
absolutely. I agree with that. I didn't know if you were going to cover in the quarterback, so I actually went all different skill positions. I have one offensive side of the ball guy. I have Amari Cooper, and then I have a safety in a corner on my list as well. So
you have a safety?
I do have a safety.
I wonder if we have the same safety.
I have a star safety.
I have a superstar safety who wants to get paid this offseason.
I also have a superstar safety who wants to get paid this offseason.
Does he play in Arizona?
He does play in Arizona.
Yeah, Budda Baker. Yep. All right. Good. Yep. That's good. That's good. We don't discuss our shit before the podcast, just so everybody knows. We don't.
It's a rarity that we do.
Yeah.
If only the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely going to want to get moved, especially Kazir White, James Conner. These guys are also up for contract as well. I know you just drafted Trey Benson, but James Conner is clearly a very integral part of this team, and he's probably going to stick around for a little bit longer, and Kazir is going to get paid as well. So safety position is definitely expendable. We saw that with the Broncos letting go of their safety. The Bengals let their guy walk last year, and Jesse Bates. So these guys are clearly not going to be integral parts of a lot of teams. And for me personally, where I have him going is a team that needs secondary help all over the place. And it's funny because they actually just beat the brakes off of the Arizona Cardinals, and I have the Washington Commanders wanting to get secondary help and Budda Baker being traded to them. A team that's leading the division right now maybe wants to make a bigger push, just kind of how like Houston did this last offseason. Clearly saw how good they were, and they're like, oh shit, like we need to go more. We need more stuff, and maybe Washington makes a little bit more of a push with how well Jaden's playing right now.
I think if Adam Peters, Washington doesn't call up the Raiders and see what they want to do with Davante, then they would be missing the boat a little bit there also. So yeah. I would honestly look at the Commanders to be very, very active. There's nothing wrong with when your young quarterback is playing really well, surrounding him with talent. A lot of teams might think that it's too early, but there's so much parity in the NFL year in, year out. At this point, if the Commanders win the division, is that going to surprise anyone? The Eagles might fire their head coach. The Cowboys look suspicious. Like this team's division at points has been the most competitive in the NFL. So to have the Commanders rise out of that, like, you know, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Commanders go big at, you know, here on out the trade deadline. And safety help would be excellent. Wide receiver help would be really good. So keep your eye on that. I wouldn't be surprised. They got a big game against the Browns because the Browns defense is still the Brown defense. If Jaden comes out and he only has 7 incompletions the last 2 weeks, that's a stupid ass number. We should have brought that up when we were talking about Jared Goff earlier, but 7 or 8 incompletions the past 2 weeks, that's just freaking nutty. So let's see what he can do against the Browns defense.
Didn't he only have 2? Didn't he only have 2 last week? And then he had 4 this week?
Then even better.
6, yeah. So no, absolutely, I'm right there with you. We brought up Amari Cooper and a team that I think could use a little bit of some wide receiver help, and we already talked about Amari potentially moving on. Cooper's in the last year of his deal. They didn't want to actually extend him in the offseason. Getting some type of capital back for him is probably the best thing right now. And I think a team that could potentially use another wide receiver out there, because you're not sure what wide receiver is going to pop up and during that week, is the LA Chargers could use a guy out there in the bowl. So I think they're a team that could potentially go after a guy like that, kind of test him out, see where he goes, and maybe be Justin Herbert's favorite target for at least the remainder of the season.
Well, I wouldn't hate that at all. Ladd has been really good. You know,
he was
averaging
good.
He's averaging like 2.88 yards per route run. I think for our own personal reasons, Ladd McConkey is going to be an interesting guy to keep a lookout on the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
He's been really, really good. He's allowed Quentin Johnson to look like a decent wide receiver because he catches every target. Hey, I hate to be the guy that talks about the white slot guy, but my goodness, they just make them somewhere in a factory and they pump them out and they just keep doing what they do. So Ladd and Wes Welker and
they got
Amendola
Cole Beasley out there.
Cole Beasley, like they just it keeps, without the weird vaccine crap that Cole Beasley does. Ladd is just Ladd, and I would love to see them add some wide receiver help. And I know Amari Cooper's had his drop problems, but I just really wonder, when you look at a situation like Cleveland, how motivated anyone can be on that team right now.
I'm right there with you. Did you have any more guys that you were wanting to move around?
No, that was on top of my list.
I only have one more, and I have Detroit. They have, I already talked about a little bit earlier, they have some secondary issues. They drafted 2 corners, Ennis Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold showing flashes of some type of brilliance, having some issues. I want to talk about that a little bit later with the rookie check-in here pretty soon. But a guy who has been getting phone calls about in the offseason and might get some more is a Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. Clearly kind of out of place right now on a Patriots team that is going to be moving forward and rebuilding with a younger team. He's 31 years old. It doesn't seem like he's going to fit on that team here in the next couple of years. So again, getting some draft capital, moving on from a guy who still puts out very good numbers, and he's been still very solid, to a team that needs him like Detroit to make that second push that they need, is going to be fantastic for them. So I think targeting a corner, but specifically Jonathan Jones, might be on the lookout here in the next 4 weeks.